Hi. 10 vintage cheapies that will still blow your mind. Of course, this is a list video. You know how much we love list videos, and it's been a while since I've done one. So here I am, and I'm going to do one. I'm going to do one on vintage fragrances, because I feel like a lot of the vintage stuff that gets talked about, that gets hyped, is either discontinued or reformulated, and it is terrible. It's either really expensive or it's a shadow of its former self. So I've got some rules with this one, and in order for it to be considered a vintage by me, it has to sit in between the time period of 1970 to 1990. So that 20-year period, I'll consider that a vintage. Anything after that, to me, is not as vintage as some might think. So these scents have to adhere to my philosophy of not being dated scents. The majority of the scents in this list are going to be using ingredients that aren't really being used so much in modern day perfumery. So if you want to smell different, hell, if you want to smell niche, then these are the ones for you. I've also tried not to talk about the usual suspects here, like your Paco Rabannes, your Polo Greens, your Kurosses, your Dracanois. There's enough content on those as it is. Here we go, but before we get started, I'm going to try and do some old school pickup lines. Why? Because old school men's fragrances were about one thing and one thing only: attracting women. Not by charm or demeanor, but by simply overpowering her olfactory senses so as to send her into a catatonic vortex of leather, oak moss, and civet, thus making her head spin, allowing her to succumb to whatever verbal machismo you could muster to push past your cigarette-stained mustache. All while maintaining this look on your face, which is a cross between being tickled and trying really carefully to fart through really tight pants so as not to shit yourself. I call this look the farkle, and it goes like this. Now, I'd love to give you an example, but I'm probably the worst person to ever attempt pickup lines, so I'm going to get a robot voice to do it for me.
Hello, baby. Do you like my sideburns? How about we go back to my place so I can burn your sides? Why are you calling the police? I carry my own handcuffs. I have a mirrored ceiling above my waterbed so you can see the boat rocking. I'm a pirate, call me Captain Crooked-Hook. I only know how to make left turns. I will now show you my penis. Wait, why do you have one too? The more the merrier, I guess.
Okay, let's start the review. I've got some honorable mentions here first, and the first one I'm going to start off with is Trussardi's Uomo. Trussardi Uomo. It's bad reformulation. The vintage is too expensive. The prices are too damn high. The next one is this one right here. This, if you can manage to see it, is a tiny, tiny bottle of Xeryus by Givenchy. Now, this one has also undergone a bad reformulation, and the vintage is too expensive and really hard to find, especially in these Art Deco-y kind of bottles, which I really love, but they're really, really difficult to find. And the last honorable mention is this one right here. This is Calvin by Calvin Klein. Beautiful scent, absolutely beautiful, but again, it's too expensive now to get a full bottle of this. Fantastic scent, actually, this one. Oh, knocks it out of the park, but not worth the current prices that are being asked on the grey market. So let's kick off with the real list. First one we've got here is this one right here. This is Bijan for men. I'd like to thank my friend Gaz for gifting me this bottle. This is very nice of him to do. This bottle, actually not this bottle, but this fragrance was released in 1987. This, however, is the reformulated version. Now, I have smelt the original as well, and I prefer, and I think it's more appropriate for the modern times, the reformulation, that is. So if you're considering getting the original of this, just be warned that it is extremely more powerful than this is, because this is actually quite strong, but it's more powerful, and the scent itself is a lot more dry and a lot less sweet than this one. And this is not a sweet scent by any means, but the original is maybe of its time more than the reformulation. I think this has been done very well, and that's why it is on this list. Now, it's called Bijan for men because it's named after the guy Bijan Pakzad, I think that was his name, Iranian-born. He came to LA, he set up shop there, selling his menswear and men's goods, and he added this fragrance, and he used to sell his stuff to like rich and famous people. He always had like his yellow sports car parked out the front as well. Yeah, it's kind of iconic as well. He came from a pretty well-off family, so he came with money, and then he lived the American dream, which apparently you can do if you have money already. To say that he was the embodiment of the American dream is somewhat disingenuous, but then again, let's say that. However, the fragrance itself is real and within the reach of anyone with some spare change, because this thing costs almost nothing, and you can probably buy a bottle with some spare change that you can find under a couch pillow, or more timely, dust from crypto trades. And I think that it's a modern miracle that they can still produce a smell so good, so well blended as well, and so well performing for such a low price. Now, there's a ton of notes in this fragrance if you look it up, but on the first spray I got carnation. Actually, I'm gonna give it a bit of a spritz. Yeah, there it is. Carnation, which is really a note that's not really being used so much in modern day perfumery, and so wearing this in these days might make you stand out from the crowd. And then there's also things like leather, and they also do say that there's oak moss in here, but we all know there's no oak moss in here. It might be some kind of moss, but it's not oak moss. There's honey, there's sage, there's cloves. There's pretty much every note in the book, but it's amazing. So get your nose onto this one, Bijan for men. Okay, the next one we've got here is Quorum by Antonio Puig. Okay, Quorum, 1981. Now this one, you need to make sure that it's a vintage because the reformulation is bad, but the vintages are still cheap and they're readily available. Okay, so this one's been around for quite a while. Quorum is a powerhouse. Now I'm going to tell you quickly about how to recognize the vintages if you can only have pictures of the box. You see the picture of the box there? It should have a thick line under the word Quorum, okay? And the modern ones have a thinner line underneath the word Quorum. And of course, if yours is a fragrance that is before 2004, then it will only have a very short ingredients list like this. And if it's before 1993, then it will not have a barcode on the box either. And you will also note that the thick line is on the bottle as well underneath the word Quorum. All right, now that we got that out of the way, Quorum is that powerhouse. And whilst all the other powerhouse fragrances of this era may have put hairs on your chest, Quorum will take those hairs and give them a chemical perm. The bitter artemisia, the caraway seed, and the lemon here in the opening really hit hard and come off really rough and punch you in the face with those olfactory senses. And sometimes they feel almost fecal. But stick with it and you will be rewarded. You'll be rewarded with a lot of pine, sandalwood, oak moss, leather, and tobacco. And real oak moss. If you get the vintage, you'll get real oak moss in it. Beautiful. Oh, and if you do have pictures of the bottle when you're buying this, if you have pictures of the bottle without the lid on, you'll notice that the atomizer should kind of look like this, like a high quality sort of atomizer. Some of them come like in a short brown plasticky sort of doohickey, where you can see the crimping on the neck of the bottle as well. Those are later formulations, and the sprayer on this one is actually quite good. Yeah, there's that. Yeah, the opening is really harsh, but you need to stick with this, and it's got lasting power, so it'll stay with you. Quorum by Antonio Puig. The next one on the list is this one right here. This is, if I can get it to focus, it is called Moods by Krizia. It's from 1989. This one is warm and nice, but still powerful. It's powerful, but it's got this understated, elegant power. It does what it says on the box. It's a mood. It's a mood. It's a contemplative mood. It's a mood for after the sun has disappeared. It's a mood that reinforces the belief that darkness is simply not just an absence of light, but its own thing altogether. Patchouli and leather are the main players here. You get some cardamom as well, which is dry thanks to the carnation, and it's slightly nuanced by this lavender. But all in all, I get warm, cozy, contemplative moods from this. And weirdly, I also get this snuggling kind of scent, the kind that makes you want to nuzzle your nose into the person who's wearing it. I reckon Moods was ahead of its time because Netflix and chill wasn't a thing yet in 1989. The next one on this list is this one right here. It is Giorgio for Men from 1984. Now, why would I pick this over Hugo Boss #1? Well, because that one has been emasculated, whilst this one is still about that oak moss and honey in the dry down. Now, I say oak moss and I use that term liberally, but it's used to denote moss of some sort. Now, the original itself has a different color juice. I don't remember it being this green, and it is different. Again, this has been reformulated. This is the newer one, but I'm still able to recommend this as a cheapie, as a vintage cheapie, because it still does a very good job at being unique and standing out. Now, the note listing, I don't actually like the opening too much on this one. I don't like the opening. And the sprayer is actually really good. Like that. Cool. Yeah. No, I don't like the opening on this one too much because aldehydes are not my favorite thing. The note listing does say that there's patchouli in here, but don't get this confused for your L'Instant de Guerlain Pour Homme au Extreme or Chanel Coromandel type of patchouli. It's not a chocolatey sort of patchouli. This is like your earthy, dreadlock, tie-dye shirt wearing kind of patchouli. Still cheap, still performs like a beast, still good, still different. Get on it. The next one, I couldn't be bothered taking it out of the garage because that bottle is finished and it took me a long time to finish, and I'm gonna put a picture of it right here. It is called Anucci Men and it's from 1989. Golf, anyone? So this is one of the most powerful beast mode floral fragrances that I've ever come across, and it's one of the very few fragrances that I dare not overspray because it can really knock you out. This is golfing on a crisp sunny day with fresh air. It starts off with a freshly dried grass and then it dries down to a nice clean vetiver, and those florals are there throughout the whole journey. It's stupid cheap. It's never been reformulated as far as I can tell because the ingredients list doesn't really have anything that requires it to be reformulated, and it's totally under the radar, and I love the bottle as well. The fact that it also makes like a little popping sound every time you take the cap off. In fact, I think I might grab another bottle of this. I miss this. Number 6 on the list, I think it's number 6, but number 6 on the list is this one right here. I've mentioned this before and I've talked about this before and how much I love this one. This is Santos de Cartier Concentrate from 1982. Okay, so for a while there, I had an unhealthy obsession with this fragrance. This, along with Azzaro's Pour Homme, were my gateway fragrances towards the fougere world. A world I hated throughout my entire life due to my notion of them being dated and my nose not being developed enough to understand their nuance. But this is not your typical fragrance from that era. It is different enough to be on this list because of the chili pepper note that's in here, and that beautiful sandalwood in the dry down is absolutely amazing. This is one that when I'm wearing it, young dudes ask me, dude, what are you wearing? You know, it smells fantastic. And these are young dudes in their 20s, so they're really digging this scent. Yes, young dudes in their 20s really digging this scent. Get on it. Number 7 on this list is this one right here. This is New West by Aramis, 1988. Now, you will never love this fragrance. You may like it, and others may like it too, but there's something about it that always makes you just want to do a double take just to make sure that Am I smelling that right? Is that right? It's that reaction to the juxtaposition of the traditionally green notes like juniper and pine and mint and oak moss against the soon-to-be flavor of the month of watermelon and sea notes, also known as Cologne or Cologne. Yes, New West was the first commercially produced fragrance to use that aroma chemical cologne, which was then done to death in the 90s. Yes, the blending in this remains a little clumsy at times, but nonetheless, it remains an interesting scent. And hella cheap. So get your nose on there because it's probably discontinued just like the rest of the Aramis lineup. Number 8 on this list, and it's not an ordered list, it's just a list of 10 of vintage cheapies that I still think are good, is this one right here. It is Zino by Davidoff. You could probably tell if you know what you're looking for that this is the reformulated version of Zino. The original came out in 1986, and if you could see the cursive sort of font which is used in the word Zino, and Davidoff is a different font. The original had the same font for both Zino and Davidoff. It was sort of like a cursive font, and on the bottom it should tell you, and on the bottom of the box it should tell you that it was distributed by a company called Lancaster, and then the reformulations were distributed by Parfums Davidoff or something like that. Parfums Davidoff Paris, I can't read it, but the original was distributed by Lancaster. Now, you can still get the originals. They're not that expensive, but they might be like double or triple the price of a reformulated one. Are they worth 3 times the price of the reformulated one? I don't think so. Now, how to describe this? If you knocked on the door of Mr. Patchoulie's house and he greeted you with a beast mode woody lavender and a smile, then you have the opening of Zino. Zino has depth and it has warmth, and whilst I've heard people say it's for mature men to wear on dates, they don't mention that those mature men are going on dates with young women. Thing is, when I said mature, you visualized an older gentleman. But here's where you're wrong, as usual, because maturity is a state of mind and has no correlation to how long you've been toilet trained. And assuming that you have been toilet trained, then mature the fuck up, spray on some Zino, and go on some dates. Okay, the second last one on this list is this one right here. This is Jacomo de Jacomo from 1980. Okay, this one is a bit challenging in the opening because of the pungent way that the galbanum combines with the clove and the cumin. But if you wait a while, it's worth it. If I could paint the picture of the kind of person who would wear this, it reminds me of an uncle of mine who used to carry his car keys in his pants pocket, but always had that special key ring hanging out the side of his pocket. He dressed not to impress, had a big-ass Tom Selleck mustache, and you could tell that he smokes his cigarettes on the left side of his mouth because that's where the slice of discoloration is on his mustache hairs. But sit down and have a drink with him and you'll soon realize that he's the coolest motherfucker, and his entire look is unapologetically on purpose. Respect. Last one on this list is this one right here. Now, I don't know. This is called Super Fragrance for Men by Etienne Aigner. It's spelled Aigner, but it's pronounced Aigner, not Aigner or whatever. It is from 1978 and it is extremely expensive. That's why I've only got this little bit, and it is worth every cent. Okay, so technically this one should not be in this list because it's not a vintage cheapie and because it's rare and expensive, but it's on this list because this is my video and it's my list and I can break my rules whenever I like. So there you go. And second of all, because it's just so damn good. This nondescript little bottle is going to have to last me a long time. This I don't really want to describe, but I will say this. There are many vintage women's fragrances that I've come across that can now be considered masculine. Shalimar and Opium come to mind, but I'd yet to come across a vintage men's fragrance that can now be considered unisex until I smelled this. It might be called super fragrance for men, but it's just a super fragrance. Thing is, if you can find one of these, jump on it immediately. It is that good. Well, folks, that's it. That's the list. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making this list and talking about these vintage cheapie fragrances. And as always, thanks for watching.